Good morning. It is August 29th, and we are starting to see maybe the first pangs or touches of fall. It is cooled down, and everybody's like, hey, living the good life. So a lot of grass starting to green up. We could do probably with a little bit more rain, but I know Northern Ohio has seen 3 rain events over the week. So a little bit of a rebuild of the soil moisture. Online today, we got Dr. Dave Gardner, we got Dr. Xiaowei Wu, we got Dr. Dave Shetlar. We also have a special guest. I'm out looking at our new set of golf holes and overall project. And Mr. Ryan DeMay is here to talk to us a little bit about that project.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the great introduction, Ed. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we're out here on site. If you're an ATI alumnus, if you're have been to the site before, this is kind of back in behind the Applewood Apartment Village, and it's about 45 or so acres split by a road that'll allow students, both from a teaching perspective, a learning perspective, a recreation perspective, to come out on campus and have access to a 3-hole golf course that'll have a par 3, a par 4, a par 5, and a practice putting green. There's also a full-size athletic pitch that can be used for soccer, football, things like that. And then a research area on the north end of the site that'll allow Ed and his colleagues here on the turf team to be able to conduct research not only in Columbus, but also in Worcester at simultaneous times and projects and things like that. So it's a really cool project. It's funded by a couple of donors and also by the university too. So it's a really great partnership. OTF is helping to do some work as well. And so I think we'll have the sports turf managers, the Ohio sports turf managers is coming out here on September the 8th, 9th. Thank you, Dr. Nangle, for an event. So if you're part of that and you want to come out and check it out, it'd be great. We'll have construction ongoing, getting started here with irrigation, hopefully by then or right around then. But no, it's a tremendous project. It'll be a huge benefit to not only the university, but especially the OSU turf team and the students alike. So we're really excited. Want to be able to have meetings, group gatherings, things like that with different associations, golf, sports turf, and otherwise lawn care around the state. So really excited. Glad to be helping out and a proud alumnus here to move this thing along. Right, Ed?
Yes, Mr. DeMay, we're glad to have you. All right. With that great news that some of you probably had wind of, and the fact that we're starting to make progress, that is going to be everything from Worcester to take it out on the turf front. Dr. Gardner, have you a weed update?
Indeed, I do, but you went out of order, and so here, it's going to take me just a second to get my act together. No, I'm just kidding. I got it. All right. So I was half tempted to not talk about this. It's like many times the subject matter repeats year over year at about the same time of the year, and I hadn't heard any reports of this, but I'm seeing some reports of stilt grass, and so I'll show a couple of pictures of that here in just a second. But before that, I just want to mention that other warm season grasses, crabgrass, and etc. At this point, I would only bother using a herbicide on those for aesthetics. Like if you have a client that's complaining, they're going to seed. The herbicide is not going to kill the plant before it's able to set viable seed for next year. And so you should plan on putting out a pre-emerge in those areas where you have crabgrass. For annual broadleaf weeds, especially after they've hardened off due to heat and drought, they can be pretty difficult to control post-emergence. So again, map out those areas for a pre-emergence herbicide next year. This is what I was talking about, Japanese stilt grass. So this is an invasive species that is starting to creep into lawns, and I wasn't going to say anything about it, but a longtime supporter of OTF and the Ohio Lawn Care Association sent me an email yesterday with pictures in a lawn. So it's like, well, I suppose I'd better talk about it. So Japanese stilt grass, it's an annual introduced from Tennessee in 1919. It's been mostly a problem in non-turf areas, but well, here's a picture of it doing just fine in a mowed environment. And what's kind of unique about it is that it has a very broad leaf blade, and it has a very bright midrib that tends to be slightly off center. And so it's kind of unique in its appearance. Sometimes people will actually even think that it's a broadleaf weed because the leaf blades are so wide. The thing about this one, though, is that it's an annual, and so you can control this pre-emergence. And so if you see this anywhere, an application of pendimethalin, prodiamine, or dithiopyr should give you a little bit of relief next year. But then also for this year, you can consider making an application of phenoxaprop. That's a post-emergence herbicide that is active on Japanese stiltgrass. Phenoxaprop's kind of a weird compound, though. It doesn't get along very well with either 2,4-D or MCPP. So if you're doing post-emergence broadleaf weed control for perennials, which you maybe shouldn't be doing at this time of the year, but if you are, generally you want to separate the application of phenoxaprop and the phenoxy herbicides by about a 3-week period. Now, this guy here, rough bluegrass, this is the one that forms the light yellow patches in the spring, and then it kind of blends in the summertime, unless it gets too dry for too long, and then it goes dormant on you, and it looks like this. And people think that that's either an insect or a disease that caused that. But no, it's just the rough bluegrass going dormant. And so you can dig down in there and you can see alive imbibed stolons that will resprout leaves once the weather conditions become more favorable for rough bluegrass. And so I get the question every now and again, well, if I have rough bluegrass and I want to get rid of it, I'm supposed to use glyphosate to selectively remove that, and then I can reseed. And can I put the non-selective herbicide on a dormant grass? And the answer is, why no? No, you can't. So the painful thing about rough bluegrass is that you have to wait for it to green back up before you can kill it with a herbicide, before you can reseed. So next week, Dr. Shetlar had the good idea that we should be talking about not only reseeding in the fall, but sod in the fall, which you can do much later than you can seed. And so we'll start talking about that in the next couple of weeks. But where you have rough bluegrass, where you're waiting for it to green up now, and then kill it with the non-selective herbicide, that might be something that you can ameliorate with sod, perhaps in the month of October. So it is a little dry right now. It's not anywhere near as bad as last summer's relatively historic drought. But this picture, which I lifted off of the internet, all credit to the U.S. Drought Monitor, the folks at the University of Nebraska. But you can see that, very little of the state is in what we would consider a drought, and yet it is moderately dry out in some areas. And so, mature grass is starting to not look the greatest where it isn't being irrigated regularly. So a couple of things about that. If you are spraying herbicides, remember that spraying herbicides on dry turf does increase the chance of accidentally injuring that turf. So do use caution. Whether or not it's going to cause phytotoxicity to the turf is dependent on many things, and it's kind of hard to predict. We just know that it makes it more likely that you're going to injure the turf if you spray herbicides on drought-stressed turf. The other thing is that when it comes to irrigation, if you're trying to maintain your grass, relatively healthy, I would say maybe this year isn't the year to just let your grass go dormant. And the reason for that is that with last year's historic drought, we had enough thinning of the turf that there's enough overseeding that was done that probably there's a lot of relatively young turf out there, and or we just don't want additional stress on those turf stands because they already had enough of that last year. So, if in places where you consider the turf aesthetics important, I would irrigate to maintain, green color. Remember that can be kind of tricky, especially if you're a homeowner watching this, because most of the products that you buy at the store that can deliver water delivered at a rate of about an inch per hour, whereas the soil infiltration capacity is a tenth of an inch per hour, which, without going into a long diatribe about that, that means that, like after you water for an hour, if you dig down with your pocket knife and you notice that it's dry a quarter of an inch down, even though you just put down an inch of water, says your rain gauge, it's because none of it actually got in. The infiltration rate is much slower than what the irrigation system is delivering. So, bear that in mind. If you are establishing from seed right now, maintain uniform soil moisture. After about September 1st, I find with the sun angle getting a little lower and the days getting a little cooler, usually one irrigation in the middle of the day, mid-afternoon is adequate if the seedlings are mulched. If we do have, warmer conditions return and it stays dry, you might have to irrigate, up to twice, maybe 3 times per day. But usually after September 1, you can get away with once a day. Of course, check. The goal is to maintain uniform surface moisture without overwatering. And that's what I have for today.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. Apologies, Dr. Wu. You were supposed to go first. It's now your turn.
No worries, please. Good morning, everyone. I have received several inquiries about curative white grub control. Actually, I'm going to put out my curative crop control trial next week. So I feel like it's about time to talk about it before it gets into problem. So so how do you know you have crop problems? So so here you can see that many people think that okay, they have brown grass, and they think it, especially around this time in around September, people think, oh yes, it's very likely to be white grubs. However, there can be other factors such as summer stress, diseases, and also can be other pests like bugs. And this year we have a pretty wet summer, so we have a lot of diseases, and brown grass was kind of common in lots of places. And also bugs, if it's not found earlier, and then you later on you found that grass does not recover, and it can be caused by bugs. So do not blame everything on white grubs. Another thing is that people see animal digging. Again, it's not, animals do not only hunt for grubs as food. They can be earthworms or cream flies, or can be caterpillars, can be any of these kind of factors other than grubs. So again, grubs is not the only one to be blamed. I would say you want to do scouting, like especially late in the season, because if you see the grass turn brown, you try to pull the grass. If it's infected by white grubs, so the grubs cut off the roots, and so make the turf can easily pull up like a carpet. So if you pull it up, and you can see it's loaded with the grubs. And the grubs, you can see they're C-shaped, 3 pairs of legs, and make it distinctive. And I'll say when you see individual grubs, do not get panic. They don't cause concern unless they are in high densities. For example, usually we say about 10 grubs per square foot is the threshold for annual grubs. So sometimes there can be other factors combined with disease and pests. And for curative control, I would recommend using clothianidin or trichinophane. Clothianidin, you may remember that earlier we talked about using that for preventive control as well. However, if you use it for curative control, you want to put out a higher rate than preventive control to be effective. And both chemicals need to be watered in after application. And also it's preferable to do spray application rather than granular application, because granulars will take time to take effect. And I would say after application, watering at least a ½ inch post application. Dr. Gardner just mentioned about irrigation. So here's irrigation again. So water in with at least ½ inch water post application, and also preferably watering with pre-application just to moisten the soil if the soil is dry. So that will help the chemicals move into the soil to reach the targeted grubs. That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. There we go. All right, Dr. Shetlar, what have we got to follow up with?
I don't really have all that much to Shawi or Dr. Wu stole my thunder of what I might talk about, but I guess what I would say is that at least what I'm seeing here in my Columbus area neighborhood were late second instars, and there are beginning now some early third instars. And when you're doing curative control, I separate actually curative control from rescue control. And in the curative control, the grubs are eating, and that clothianidin treatment can be extremely effective when the grubs are eating. If we get towards late September, early October, and you discover grubs, it really turns into dilox or trichlorophon, because that has contact toxicity. And the grubs may be either slowing down their feeding or stop feeding at that time. So you really need a contact insecticide as opposed to a stomach insecticide. So either one of those at this time will be very effective. And again, the key, I actually, if you're in the lawn care, I usually, if a homeowner has discovered they've got grubs and you're going to go do a treatment, I recommend talk with that client, have them pre-irrigate. If you can wet that thatch a little bit before you make the application, and then post-application irrigation, you'll have the maximum chance of getting the maximum amount of active ingredient down to where the grubs are feeding, and you'll have the best success with that. So that's just my additions to the grub treatments that Dr. Wu mentioned. Again, when it comes to the Ed, you're always worried that I keep talking about the armyworms and I'm going to jinx us. But to give you an example, I talked with our field crop entomologist on Tuesday. He said he had fall armyworm traps out in 5 different locations, and last week he got 3 fall armyworms in those traps. In 2021, when we had that armyworm outbreak, he said his traps are full at this time of the year. So I think we've escaped. I don't see any hurricane fronts going to blow anything up here, at least for now. And even if it did, it's probably too late for them to really cause any havoc that we saw a few years ago. That's all I've got, Ed.
Come on, Dr. Shetlar. All right, one other question, because I did spot them. Spotted lanternfly were on a lot of trees in Cleveland last weekend, I noticed. What's kind of the update on this, and is it something we need to be watching for? Or
we have a whole bunch of information. We've got a website that's called the Beagle, Buckeye Yard and Garden Line. And so if you go to bygl.osu.edu and put in the search engine there, spotted lanternfly, you will come up with about 3 to 4 sort of fact sheet looking things. And they will discuss the biology of that critter, the effect that it has, and most importantly, control procedures. And so I don't want to list all the insecticides and other things other than just squashing the dang things that you can do. But there's a lot of insecticides that are available that are quite effective. I guess since you opened that door, I've noticed that the monarch butterflies are beginning their migration, and especially on Facebook and Instagram, there are several of these anti-pesticide, quote, environmentalist type people there that are claiming that all of our lawn insecticides are the reason why the monarch butterflies are crashing in their populations. Nothing could be further from the truth from that. Data do not support any contention like that. When we apply our grub insecticides or our surface insecticides, they don't move off target. Several of them were saying, oh yeah, my neighbor sprayed their lawn for grubs and it killed everything in my yard. And we get these kind of claims that get started and people sooner or later begin to believe it. And the reality is that we don't have any data to support any of those types of contentions. As a matter of fact, I contend that turfgrass is actually a pretty good Lepidoptera habitat. We've got a dozen sod webworms. We've got a bunch of cutworms, armyworms, and so forth. And a lot of people don't realize that we actually have 3 species of skipper butterflies that use our cultivated turfgrasses as their food. And so turfgrass is actually a pretty good habitat for Lepidoptera. And indeed, as long as you don't regularly nuke it with surface insecticides.
And I will say, Dave, I noticed some news from Europe this week. They mentioned that there was a dramatic recovery in butterfly populations, but then they also added that it was a warmer year compared to last year. So
yes, the temperature and moisture have probably the biggest effect on insect populations than anything else that happens out there.
Perfect. Okay, we will thank you, everybody. We will see you next week. We are starting to get to the end of our weekly reports, probably get towards the end of September with that. Like Ryan DeMay mentioned, we have the Sports Field Manager event here in Worcester on the 9th of September. On the 29th of September is the golf outing, raising funds for scholarships for Worcester students, and that's at Pine Hills. And so, if you want to get involved, get a hold of us. We will see you all next week. Enjoy the long weekend, folks, and congratulations. You've got through the battle of the 100 days and a few extra.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.